All right, welcome back to this session. It is our lunchtime table talk with Chaplain, Reverend Dr. Chaplain Sylvia Moseley from the Dayton Correctional Institution. Our title is You Can't Heal What You Hide. And if you were with us in the morning session with Ronnie Burks Trousdale, Tom Lukey, and Mike Davis, we unearthed some things that in our landscape. So we painted this reentry landscape. And one of the questions was, what are some of the challenges that we need to put in our landscape for reentry? And Chaplain Moseley, one of the things was that Ronnie talked about was bias. And then Dr. Davis talked about the silence of voices around the issues in community. And so kind of what we came up with is that wonderful metaphor of the iceberg, right? That we only see 20%. And it's that underneath the water stuff that often trips us up or keeps us from being impactful, that creates barriers that our men and women that are returning bump up against. And I think that you are going to be extending upon that iceberg, that under the water, with talking about healing and the emotions and the grief and all those internal things that do not present themselves until something happens, right? And so to the question that we were discussing before we started recording of, hurting people hurt people, and why is it that that healing is an essential piece to people being able to thrive when they come home. And so it is just an absolute delight and pleasure to spend this time with you, Chaplain Moseley. For those of you who do not know who she is, Chaplain Moseley has been a chaplain in several of our DRC institutions. She's also a minister in the local church. But more than anything, Chaplain Moseley is just this amazing presence. Our bishop this morning of West Ohio talked about being angels and being answers to prayers. And in many ways, Chaplain Moseley is just in your persona and in your approach and in the way you see men and women. You look beyond what they have done. You look beyond even character to the heart and the soul of individuals. And so being that healer that you are, you bring to this discussion, I think, insights that people haven't really considered or thought about. And also as people that are doing this work, you see us as well, and you see perhaps our own icebergs and what's underneath our surface. And I can't wait for our folks to engage with you to become better at this work because of the level of healing that we need to have as well within ourselves. So with that, I'm going to bring it over to you to just kind of sit around the table with us, the lunch table with us, and talk about not being able to heal what we hide and why it is important that we bring the light in to these spaces for ourselves and for those that we are trying to serve and serve well. So I bring it to you, Chaplain Moseley.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Reba, and to the Ohio reentry community. Thank you. And for those DRC folks that are here and that were here earlier, thank you so much. I am honored to be asked to share from the topic of we can't heal what we hide. And so I'll jump right into it because I've got a lot of territory to cover, and I tend to stop and talk about a particular issue longer than I should. So I'm going to try to stay on track and on course. I am a New Yorker and I drink coffee. So those two things should tell you that I talk a little fast. And so if at any time you want to ask questions, raise your hand, slow me down, please do so, okay? Can we agree that we have to be able to interact with one another, even here in this venue, because I'm watching to see if someone is raising their hand or saying, slow down, whatever, okay? First of all, I want to talk about what brought me here. And what brought me here to this day and time is the life that I grew up in. I grew up in the inner city of New York City. Brooklyn, New York is where I'm from. My brother came back from Vietnam with a raging drug habit, which, you know, of course, a job cannot provide funds for a drug habit. And so he became a resident of New York State prisons, upstate New York. And so what I've learned in being a family member of someone that's incarcerated, also being a member of the faith community, reaching out to those that are incarcerated, and also working within the prison community and being a part of the DRC staff, is Richard Rohr said, pain that is not transformed is transferred. Pain that is not transformed is transferred. That's pretty much saying that hurting people hurt people, but that takes it a step further, because what do we do with that hurt? And what Richard Rohr is saying, that hurt, that pain must be transformed into something positive. And so as those of us that are working in this helping field as first responders, the issues that we deal with, the question that came up before we came on camera about a mother harming her child certainly comes under that umbrella. Pain that is not transformed is transferred, and it will be transferred onto children. It will be transferred onto other loved ones, because we start within that small circle of hurting people in our family, those that are closest to us, long before we go out into the community. So because I'm a preacher, I like to do what Jesus did. Jesus used parables to make a point. And so I want to share this short parable, this story that's known as the river story. If you would just bear with me and just close your eyes and try to visualize this. You're walking along the bank of a rushing river, and you see a person in the water who seems to be drowning. You leap into the water and you pull the person out of the water, and you're feeling good about getting them out and they didn't drown. But a few minutes later, another person floats by that seems to be drowning. And once again, you jump into the river and you pull that person out. And as you're pulling that person out, you look over and you see more and more people in the river drowning, and you're pulling them out. You're running and pulling them out as fast as you can. You are the first responder. The first responder is whomever is there on the front lines of helping. Whether you're working in the prison, outside the prison, in the community, and foster care with children, domestic violence, wherever you're at, you're working as a first responder. So the river story in our lives offers us a metaphor about how often we are so busy trying to fix what's in front of us that we cannot pay attention to how they originated. Our efforts and our focus go towards what we see immediately, what's demanding our attention. And what happens is it takes a tremendous toll on us. Let's consider the impact of our situation of the first responder with all of these bodies in the river, but apply that to how we're dealing with people's lives in the river of life in the state of Ohio, coming in and out of our institutions. And we're hearing the stories of physical and emotional abuse. We're hearing stories of terror and neglect. apathy and rape and incest and addiction and mothers killing their own children. And we as first responders are tasked with providing resources for men and women starting over, coming out of prison, or being able to stay out, and their children, individuals who may have suffered or perpetrated from all or some of those issues. And what impact does having to help pull lives out of the rushing rivers of life's trauma have on us as first responders? Dr. Bessel van der Volk contends in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, that trauma is the #1 health issue in America. Henri Nouwen, in his book, Wounded Healer, maintains that being a wounded individual, having suffered trauma, as he looks after his own wounds, he must also be prepared at the same time to heal the wounds of others. But as we think about that, what are our wounds? Those of us who are first responders, and we've heard words such as alienation, separation, isolation, loneliness, and some of those have been used to describe the wounds of those of us that are first responders. In 1995, the term vicarious trauma was coined by medical professionals who saw that in people who are in the helping field, after we've experienced a lot of trauma, and a lot is relative, it depends on who is affecting, whether it's a lot or not, there's a profound shift in the worldview of those helping professionals. What does that look like? Their view about the world becomes altered, and by being exposed to traumatic events over and over again, their view about the world becomes a little jaded. If we look in the Bible, we see that Lot's wife, when she saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, turned into a pillar of salt. If we take that literally, it destroyed her. Being exposed to that level of trauma literally destroyed her. And a domestic violence shelter worker may stop being able to believe that any relationships can be healthy, and may start to distance themselves in their own personal life from having any relationships. A child abuse investigator may lose trust in anyone who approaches their children, not wanting to allow their children to have sleepovers or interact with other families because they see a pedophile around every corner. Or they may become so beat down by the work that they get so depressed and despondent that they just are going through the motions. And again, we see that in the Bible with Elijah, when he became depressed and despondent, and following his encounter with community evil, and said, God, nobody else is doing this. There's nobody else I can depend upon. That sense of isolation and hopelessness is not new. That's what happens with vicarious trauma. And so one of the things I'd like to do today, as in the time that we have, is to look at what are some of the symptoms that we can be aware of in our own lives to really just have that self-awareness, to watch ourselves, to be very alert to our own bodies and our own selves and how we react to the world, to see if we are experiencing symptoms of vicarious trauma. Because again, we can't heal what we hide. And in order for us to be wounded healers, we have to have a level of self-awareness so that we don't walk around with all of these symptoms and we're not aware, and then we're throwing up on people or we're acting out and we can't see ourselves because our level of self-awareness is so low. So Laura Vandervoot Lipsky, in her book, Trauma Stewardship, talks about the vicarious trauma that we can experience, and that it pertains to anyone who interacts with suffering or pain and crisis of others on our planet. So you don't have to have a title. You can be a secretary, sending out notices. We have a lady in our church that sends out notices to all of the associate ministers when there's a death in the congregation. She's been averaging at least 3 notices a week of people dying. And I called her up and I asked her, how are you doing? Because I know that this is trauma for her. She's experiencing the trauma of people's families being torn by grief. And one of the things that I did get from her voice was this feeling of helpless, that there's nothing we can do. That's one of the signs that I am dealing with vicarious trauma, when I start to feel helpless and hopeless, that there's nothing I can do. And as that feeling continues on, sometimes I may ask myself, why am I even getting out of bed? I might as well just stay in bed. I've worked at 4 prisons, and many times in coming into work, I have conversations with our correction officers and other staff members, and I'll say things to them like, well, how are you doing today? And they say, well, I'm just counting the days. And I say, counting the days until what? And they say, until I retire. And I've asked, well, when's your retirement? Oh, I got 5 years. I got 10 years. And I think to myself, what a miserable way to live, that I come to work every day and the only thing I can think about and look for is a 10-year down the road retirement that I may or may not even live to see or enjoy. So that's a sign that there is an issue with vicarious trauma. When I have that sense of hopelessness and helplessness, and the only thing that I can look forward to is my retirement. Another area that I think is important to be aware of is this area of hypervigilance. And hypervigilance has a lot to do with how I move in this world. Now, I told you starting out, I'm a New Yorker. I talk fast, I move fast, but I have to watch myself for this one as well, because I can get in a hurry doing things and thinking, well, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. I got to pay attention to this. I've got this, and this to do. I'm always moving real fast. I'm always doing. When I work like that all the time, it's a rough way to live. My body is not supposed to be at that heightened level of hypervigilance all the time. And not only that, I cannot attend to my mind, my body, and my spirit when I'm operating at that level. And so it takes being self-aware, saying, okay, what am I doing? All right, what am I doing in my next move? One of the things that I heard in one of the talks earlier was about boundaries and setting boundaries. And in dealing with hypervigilance, what comes with that many times is the inability to set and keep healthy boundaries. It's one thing to set healthy boundaries, but I have to be able to keep a boundary. See, I have to be able to now protect my boundary and say, this is my boundary, and understand that no is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence, because once I start to explain to you why I set this boundary, what I'm saying to you is that my boundary is now up for negotiation. That my no is really not no. I can be moved from my no. And one of the classes that I teach in the prison with women is setting and keeping healthy boundaries and learning how to be assertive without being aggressive, learning how to protect my boundary without being aggressive. Because one of the things that may lead me as a helper in this area to be hypervigilant is my inability to stop taking on more tasks than I can actually do. Look, I have learned in working in this environment that people will let you overwork yourself. They will allow you to work yourself to death, come to the funeral, stand over the casket and say, she never took a vacation. She never took a break. She was always there working hard. What a wonderful person. And now I'm laying in the casket dead because I did not protect myself and my boundaries. And once I learn how to do this in my own life, I can also help our population learn how to do it in their life. I have women that are incarcerated right now because they were not able to say no to situations that they got into. If they had just said, no, I'm not going, or no, I don't want to be a part of that, or no, I don't want to be with this man, many of them would not be in prison today. But they grew up in communities and families, and Dr. Davis spoke about it, early adverse childhood experiences, where they were never taught how to set boundaries. They were never taught that their bodies were their own and they could say no. And when I, as a helping professional, am able to model that type of behavior before them and help them learn how to set boundaries, but not only just how to set it, but practice keeping them. We do role plays at the prison because I do what I have as muscle memory. If I don't practice this and practice setting boundaries, when I'm put in a tight situation, I'll go back to that muscle memory of where I just said, oh, okay, yes, I'll do it. And that's why practice and role play is so important. Hypervigilance is a lack of healthy boundaries. Another area that I think we all need to be aware of, that I see as a helping professional, that comes with being exposed to continued and escalating levels of trauma in our lives, on the job or in the community. We will all experience over and over again the death of George Floyd. That was trauma. We all experienced that. We all experienced the trauma of COVID. We've had family members die. We've had co-workers pass away. We had co-workers lose their family members. And so this secondary vicarious trauma that we've all experienced as a community has the ability to diminish our creativity. Diminished creativity is a symptom of secondary or vicarious trauma, because all my energy is just going into getting through my days, just making it through one day at a time. I don't meditate on anything. I'm not writing anything. I'm not trying to think of new ways to do things. I lock myself into a box of, we've always done it this way, and this is how we do it. This is the DRC way. Or this is the way we've done it in my family. Or this is how we are. I don't do anything more than go home, watch Netflix, or watch those episodes over and over again, whatever they are, because my creativity is so diminished. I don't want to think any new thoughts. I don't want to have any new ideas. I don't want to try and come up with a new way of doing anything. I don't want to be challenged because I'm dealing with this internal hopelessness, helplessness that affects my ability to be creative. And the deeper we sink into a culture of trauma, the less flexible and the less original our thinking becomes. And so it cripples us as an organization. It cripples us in families. It cripples us in the community to try to solve the issues. We have giant issues to deal with, and we are brilliant people, and we can come up with new ways of doing things. Mike Davis talked about the book, what was it, until we reckon. And what the author says is that we cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We can't incarcerate our way out of poverty. We can't incarcerate our way out of these issues that we have in our community. Well, we know what doesn't work. What does work? What can we do? What ideas do we have to try to address these issues? As a community, we are, I believe we're fearfully and wonderfully made in God's image, and we have the capacity. But when we allow ourselves to sink into secondary trauma, and now we're just moving by rote, we're just moving out of habit, by helping out of habit, and we think we're doing a great job. And then for those of us that are Christians, we become even more hopeless, and we become unable to embrace ideas of complexity. We become rigid in our thinking. We have a duality, the way we see the world. We see the world in terms of black and white, right and wrong, good and bad. And then we want people to choose sides. What side are you on? What do you believe? And when we are unable to embrace the complexities of life, the grays, the nuances, again, that diminished creativity becomes a part of that. We're not creative, and we don't want to look out at anything outside of that box that we put ourselves in. And then we do not embrace the complexities of life, and we see everything from a dualistic standpoint. It's either black or white, yes or no, good or bad, evil or not evil. And we work in a system that is adversarial. We live in a polarized community. And our two-party political system is also very adversarial. And all of those structures model the inability to embrace the complexities of life. And if you've ever experienced primary trauma, your individual need for the concrete elements of reality becomes paramount. We need to make room within ourselves for all the complexities and gray areas of life. It's too painful to not do that. When we're rested in a good space and emotionally on our A game, we know that the world is a complex place. When we're rested and we're taking care of ourselves and have self-care, we know that seeing things through a flattened and reductionist lens does not serve us. When we are rested and exercising, I saw someone put self-care in the chat, that self-care is important. When we're taking care of ourselves, then we allow our minds to open up to the possibilities of other ideas other than what we see in front of us. I don't want to just go on and on. If someone has a question, if not, another issue I think that we deal with as helping professionals and wounded healers is minimizing. And I've caught myself doing this a lot over the last 2 years, because prior to my becoming a chaplain at DRC, I was also a chaplain at Hospice of Dayton. And my territory covered probably from the area of Trotwood to the end of the state, nursing homes and private homes of individuals who had decided that they wanted to go home to spend their last time. And I became very aware of the fact that age has nothing to do with health. And so every day I became grateful for, well, nobody had to change my diapers or put food in my mouth today. So what do I have to complain about? right? I'm able to put on my own clothes and put food in my own mouth. And so I'm having a great day. And what that does is that minimizes, for me, the human experiences of others that are dealing with trauma, because now my lens has become narrow, that if you're not having to have your diaper changed or someone put food in your mouth, you're in great shape. What are you complaining about, right? Nothing that can happen to you is that bad. It puts me in the place of mentally, because I'm not saying what I say out of my mouth, is what goes on in my head and in my heart and in my spirit as I encounter those that are dealing with trauma, those that are dealing with brokenness. My lens now will minimize mentally their experiences, because I'm operating from a mental and spiritual position of, well, as long as you can put on your own clothes and feed yourself, you're doing okay. So I have to be aware of that. And I'm glad that Reba asked me to prepare this presentation, because it made me look at myself as well. And I don't believe that God ever places me in an arena that first I don't have to examine myself, that this is not for me. So that's why I speak from I make I statements, because I can only heal myself as I talk about me. I can't talk about you and what's going on in your life. What I can suggest, that if I'm dealing with these issues, then maybe you might be as well. And so maybe this information is good for all of us. I hope that it is, because those of us who bear witness to a range of human experiences, a range of human pain, a range of human trauma and brokenness, we can start out being moved by individuals' stories. We can start out by being affected by it, but over time, it may take more and more intense or horrific expressions of suffering to deeply move us, because I know that I've gotten to a point where I pretty much have protected my heart, so that I'm not carrying this home and getting beat down by everything I hear. Let me give you an example. The day after New Year's Eve, the day that was a Sunday. So 2 days after New Year's Eve, we had church in the prison. And I received a phone call for one of our residents that her son had been shot and killed. And after I confirmed and verified and called her to the chapel, and I let her call her family because her family wanted to tell her, and her family told her, she screamed and fell to the floor. Not only did that scream pierce my heart, it also took me back to 1983, when my youngest sister was killed in a car accident. And she was so badly damaged. When we walked into the funeral home, my mother began to scream and say, "That's not my daughter." When I heard that woman scream about her son, it took me back to some unresolved issues of grief that I had regarding my sister's death, that I had pushed down and pushed down. And it came up when that woman screamed, and tears just streamed down my face. I couldn't believe I was actually crying. I'm like, "What are you crying for?" And until I sat with it to understand what I was feeling, I wasn't able to identify that her grief touched some unresolved issues in my own life of grief. So when I minimize other people's experiences, I distance myself from their pain, because what I'm really trying to do is protect myself from my own pain. And again, I can't be a wounded healer unless I start to touch my own pain and my own grief. and being able to empathize with others, with their pain and their grief, as opposed to judging and telling them what they should do. One of the things I think is the least helpful is telling someone what they should be doing. I've had people come to my office and say, well, Chap, what do you think I should do? And I say to them, what do you think you should do? Because until you own your own solutions, you won't live in it. And it's the same thing with pain, and it's the same thing with grieving. I've had people on the phone tell their family members after they just told them about a death, well, be strong. And my question is to them, what does that look like? What does be strong mean when someone you love has died? Does that mean you're not supposed to feel? Does that mean you're not supposed to cry? Does that mean you're not supposed to miss them? Does that mean you're not supposed to act as if you really love them? Because the price we pay for loving someone is when they're no longer in our lives, it hurts, and we grieve and we cry and we have pain. That's why in the workbook I wrote, one of the pages is a drawing, and it's not an elegant drawing. It's a child's drawing of a roller coaster. And the roller coaster shows the various emotions that we go through as we deal with issues of grief. And some days I might be going up and out of the dumps, and I'm up here and feeling okay. And then out of the clear blue sky, I'll just go back down again. And then I'll go back up, and then I might go around, and then I might come back again to that place of depression. Grief is a process. It's a journey. I believe the word of God that says he'll be with me even in the valley of the shadow of death. Right? It's a valley that I can be in as I grieve. And so as a healer, as a wounded healer, if I've not been able to deal with my own grief and give myself empathy and allow myself to grieve, then I'm not going to allow someone that I'm working with or someone that I'm helping to experience their own grief either. I will say things like, it's going to be all right. Well, that's not true at all. It's not going to ever be all right. That person that they love is not going to be in their life anymore. So no, that's not going to be all right. They might get to a point in their lives where they're not hurting as much and it's not as painful, but it's not going to go back to the way it was. It's not going to be all right. Look, when I look at the word of God and I see what Job, right, the ministry of presence comes out of the book of Job, because his friends came from all over. And when they saw how beat up and broken he was and sick because he had sores all over his body, they sat with him for 7 days and said nothing, did not open their mouths. Why do you say? Well, I would suggest because they recognized that they did not have a language to make Job feel better about his present situation. They did not have words to comfort him, to make him think it was going to be okay. But they did have that ministry of presence that says, I cared enough about you to stop what I was doing, to come away and to come see about you and sit with you and just be here. Just be here for you, that presence, that ministry of presence. And that's all we need to do. We don't need to have a language. We don't need to give people platitudes and scriptures and to tell them God knows what's best, because I have met a lot of recovering addicts that are angry as heck with God because somebody told them that God took their loved one, and they are still angry. I can identify because when my first husband died, that was what the chaplain's assistant told me. Well, you know, Miss Moseley, God needs another flower in his garden. I said, what the hell kind of God is that? And I was angry. And every time someone in my family died from a lifestyle that we grew up in of addiction and medicating our feelings. We grew up in that lifestyle. I was angry when someone died because all I could think about was God was taking another, just plucking people out of my life to put in his garden, because I did not have an understanding of religion or God. I didn't have a praying grandmother. My grandmother was a drunk. My grandfather was a bootlegger. So we have a population that is not sophisticated or religiously literate. And when we say things and we come to them as people that represent whatever religion we represent, they're going to believe whatever we tell them because they think we know what we're talking about. And many times we don't. And so it's best to not say anything, just be quiet and have that ministry of presence so that we don't minimize their feelings and their grief and make them feel as if something's wrong with them for feeling the way they feel. For my husband shared about his father dying, how he and his uncle dealt with it. And he said, well, we didn't cry. We just kind of got together and looked at each other and said, yeah, you okay? Yeah, you okay? Because we have in our society given men permission to express one emotion and one emotion only, and that's anger. Anything else that a man expresses as an emotion, his manhood is on the block, is questioned. So we've done a disservice in our culture in socializing little boys and little girls in terms of their emotions, that the only emotions that they can have as a little boy is anger. Little girls, you can't have anger. You've got to stuff yours down. So when I heard the question about the mothers hurting their children, and when Mike talked about adverse childhood experiences, and we look at the violence in our community and the bias, all of these things go back to the home. If we don't start creating healthy families, healing our communities that are so traumatized and broken. Jeremiah was called a weeping prophet because he saw the brokenness in Judah. He saw Babylon come and destroy the community. And all he could do was weep. He was letting that out, just crying. Many times, that's all we can do is weep. We can cry. We can let it out. Earlier, I heard journaling. We can journal about it. Not only journal, but we can write letters to our loved ones. But I think one of the things that I think that is really important for healing is having a safe place where we can start to live out some things, not just talk about it, but also practice it and do it. And one of the programs that I've been a part of for a lot of years is called Alternatives to Violence. And Alternatives to Violence has curriculum for juveniles. It also has curriculum. It started in the prisons in upstate New York by Quakers, of course, which is where our present day prison system pretty much came from what Quakers put together in Europe and then brought to this country. But the Quakers put together this program called Alternatives to Violence. I use a lot of their curriculum in my Bible studies and teaching because it deals with one of the evidence-based practices is that people have to practice new behaviors. CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. Okay, so let's tie this together, right? If I feel like I have to be the savior, if I've got all the answers, that I have to help everyone, that thinking comes out of being raised in a household where I was told that I had to do it all. I was in a household where there was addiction, where As a child, I had to take care of everybody. I had to be that savior for them, or at least try and keep everything together. And so as an adult, I still live that way. I'm in a helping professional because I can help. I know how to help. That's what I'm drawn to. That's in my DNA. And I will work myself into chronic exhaustion. And then I'll be sick. My body will start to break down. I was reading something where someone was sharing and said, I feel like I need a wheelbarrow for the bags underneath my eyes. And all of us, I'm sure, at one time or another, I know I have experienced a day where I worked all day long, nonstop. It was constant. And so when I got home and laid down and stopped, I was tired and I enjoyed that rest. But I can't work like that every day, all day long. I work myself into a situation where I am bone tired, soul tired, heart tired. My body is tired. My mind is tired. My spirit is tired. I'm tired of people. I can't remember a time when I wasn't tired. And guess what? I'm not a very nice person. I may think I am. I may think I'm doing okay. But my family is kind of tiptoeing around me. People on the job are kind of avoiding me or tiptoeing around me or picking and choosing the words that they say to me, because that exhaustion is coming out in my behavior and I don't see myself. I don't have that level of self-awareness. One of the things that I think that's been beneficial for me is being a part of a 12-step program. I've been in recovery for 29 years. I still go to meetings. I have people in church saying to me, Reverend, you still go to those meetings? You're not getting high anymore. Why are you still going? And I say to them, you still going to church since you found Jesus? Right? That's why I'm going to those meetings. The same reason you go to church, because I need a community that understands addiction. As wonderful as our church community is, they don't understand addiction. And that's okay. I can't get everything from one place. So I need to allow the people that come into my orbit, the people that are placed in my area, to understand and know that it's okay to go. If you need grief counseling, find a grief group. That's okay to do that. You're not going to find everything in one place. And maybe what we can do is try to put those types of vehicles together for them so they won't have to try and find it for themselves, but we can have those resources available, because we need to heal as a community. We need to learn how to say no without being aggressive, without you having to be a whole lot of MFs and other things before I get to the no, because that's how I've always talked to people. I need to learn how to talk to my children, so I don't have children going to school angry because they got cursed out before they got to school that morning. They listen to loud thumping music that affected their spirits. I need parenting classes. I had someone call me up and say, Chaplain, I want to come in your prison and I want to have prayer with the people there. And I said to him, well, thank you, but that's not what I need. I can pray with them. We have Bible studies where we pray. I need women that will come in here and commit to doing a 10-week study with them on parenting. I need women that will commit and come do a Bible study with them about conflict resolution, about setting boundaries. I need committed people that will walk with them through some things. I don't need you to come in here and pray with them one night and then you leave and then you go back to your community and say, boy, we was in the prison and we had a good time and we prayed for people. No, if you have to get your feeling of self-esteem from coming into the prison, then there's some more work that needs to be done in our lives. If my self-esteem has to come from what I do for others, then I need to work on that, because my self-esteem should come from the inside. My self-esteem should not come from the outside, that I need people to help in order to feel good about myself. So that chronic exhaustion can come from that sense of, I got to keep going. I got to keep getting this fixed. I got to yeah, I like that. My team will commit to 40 weeks character development. That's exactly what we need. That we need teams that will come in and walk with women and men in the prisons to help change, because what we have is a family problem. This is about families. And it's not just one or two people getting out of prison and going back to a community. They're going back to a community and family many times that are broken. And that doesn't just mean that they're poor. Poverty does not the sole purview of brokenness. They are broken families that have a lot of resources, that are economically doing well, but they're still broken. They're still broken because there's family, domestic violence, there's addiction. It's just hidden better, but it's still there. So I think it's important to understand that, as those of us that are caregivers, that many times when we reach out as professionals to help others, that I've got to pay attention to my body. My body, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, my body will tell me when I'm allowing trauma to have that impact on me and I'm feeling helpless and hopeless, or being hypervigilant, or I'm having back pain and headaches and body aches and high blood pressure and clinical depression and other ailments that may not only be just physical, but as a result of the combined consequences of trauma. It will continue to impact my body if I don't start to deal with it and get it out and talk about it. Because again, I can't heal what I hide. And I don't hide it from you. I hide it from myself. I deny it. I'm saying, oh no, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm like cool in the gang. I'm all right. Things go swell in my life. No problem over here. When in fact, I'm overeating. I'm drinking a lot of caffeine. I may be acting out in terms of just the way I deal with people. I've got to look at, am I taking in alcohol? Am I drinking too much? Am I gambling? I walked up, my husband and I just came back from Vegas, and I saw a lot of people just stuck in place in front of slot machines. And I thought to myself, they make the environment really nice and pretty, but it's really not all that different from the inside of housing units in the prison. These people are stuck in place, and they are just stuck and engaged in what's right in front of them, gambling. They're caught up and don't even realize it. And so one last thing I want to share is that my inability to listen, to deliberately avoid, okay, I've got 15 minutes, thank you, to avoid interacting with people, again, is another indication that I'm suffering from secondary vicarious trauma, not reading emails, not returning phone calls, not responding to voice messages, not meeting deadlines, not following through. It's passive aggressive behavior as well. Because if I've not been able to set healthy boundaries and say no, or my boss will come to me with something and say, well, I need you to do this when my plate is already full. And instead of me saying to my boss, well, what is it? I've got this, this, and this already on my plate. What do you want me to take off my plate in order to put on what you just brought to me? Because I can't put that on top of what I've already got. That's setting a boundary. That if you want me to take on something else, you're going to have to take off something that I'm already working on. I can't keep working like this with all of these things. I have to be able to set that type of boundary. But if I don't, what I'll do is I'll become passive aggressive. And my passive aggressive behavior is I'll say yes with my mouth and do this. Yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I'll be doing this in my heart all the time. I'll be passive aggressive. So no, I won't read your email. I won't respond to it. And this happens a lot of times in the workplace as well, where you'll send the email to someone and wonder, well, did they get it? Are they going to respond? What happened? And they're not. It just goes crickets. You don't hear anything from them. It's passive aggressive behavior. So the work that I need to do on myself has to start with me first in order to help men and women who also don't know how to set boundaries, who also engage in passive aggressive behavior, who tell us yes when they really mean no, when they don't know how to say no, but they'll say yes, but they really mean no, but they'll do no. So they won't say no, but their behavior will say no. That's what makes it passive aggressive. I don't have the tools in my toolbox to say to you what I really feel and what I really want to do. So I'll show it to you in my behavior. But if you call me on it, I'll say, no, that's not what you see. No, I'll deny it because I don't have the inner fortitude to own my behavior because I don't know how. That's why it has to start with families as a whole, training, families as a whole coming together. I have to learn a new way of speaking to people. You know, that's why when I teach and preach, I tell people, you don't have to speak in tongues as evidence of the Holy Spirit, right? I speak in tongues by not cursing you out, because I know how to curse in 5 different languages. And the fact that I'm not cursing you out is evidence of the Holy Spirit, because you've done or said some things that weren't a good cussing out, but I'm choosing not to. I'm making a choice not to. And that's what we have to learn how to do, is to make choices to change our behavior. Romans 12:1-2 says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of my mind. I have to change my thinking. All that is cognitive behavior therapy, changing the way I think. How come I've been able to stay clean, no mood or mind altering drugs, no slips, dips, or weekend trips for 29 years? Why? Because I changed my idea of fun. I thought it was fun to get drunk to celebrate your birthday. Why? Well, how do people celebrate New Year's if you don't have a drink? I've celebrated 29 New Year's without a drink. I had to change my thinking about what fun is in my life. I had to change my thinking and then change my behavior by practicing new behavior, by getting a new group of people around me. I can't go back to the same behavior and then try to get new people. I can't go back, get new behavior and go back to the old people. So I have to change my behavior and change my people. That's why in the literature, Narcotics Anonymous, they tell them that old people, places, playgrounds, and playmates are often a threat to your recovery. And we have people that come out of institutions that still don't understand the deadly nature of what they're dealing with. I had a young lady tell me yesterday, she said, well, Chaplain, I've not gotten high since I've been in prison. So when I get out of prison, I'll be okay. I said, no, that's a setup for failure. You will not be okay, darling. You will not. Right? You need a community that will come around you to support you in staying clean, that will support you, just like I need a spiritual community that will support me in my spiritual beliefs, whether that's the church, a synagogue, a mosque. I need that community. I need a community that's going to support me in staying clean and not putting any drugs in me one day at a time, not selling it, not touching it, not having it in my area. one day at a time. I need that community. So I need a faith community that will support me in staying clean, not by making me feel bad about needing a support community and tell, well, you don't need those 12 steps. All you need is one step. That's Jesus. We set people up for failure when we tell them that. We can send people to grief groups, but we don't want to send them to support groups to stay clean and to stop using drugs. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that when the church comes into the prison and they preach that to them, that all you need is Jesus. You don't need those 12 steps. Whatever it is they need to stay clean, they need that to stay clean. And then we tell them that story about, I stopped chasing women and drinking and drugging all in the same day. Well, that's not your story. That's not my story. And that might not be their story. And we need to understand that even Jesus had a progressive healing that he did when he spit in the man's eyes. He said, can you see? He said, well, I see trees that look like people. And so he laid hands on them again. Everybody's healing is not going to be the same. So we need to allow people to get what they need without beating them up and making them feel guilty. But guilt is something that we can spread around. And when I make people feel guilty, I need to, again, look at myself and say, what's going on in my life? Because this vicarious trauma can make me feel guilty. I'll take that on and feel guilty about being good to myself. I'll feel guilty about buying myself a new pair of shoes. I'll feel guilty about going out to a restaurant because the people that I saw at the prison, they can't go to a restaurant. I'll feel guilty anytime I try to enjoy the life that God has given me. And then it'll make me guilt-ridden, where all I'm focusing on is the negative and not the positive. 9 months after a worker had been exposed to Hurricane Katrina, and I was in seminary at the time, and our school went down as a school to Mississippi to help take water and supplies to people who had been impacted by Hurricane Katrina. And there were people that had not experienced the total devastation that felt so guilty about not experiencing that total devastation and felt so bad for their community and their friends that when we tried to bring them water, they would say, no, don't give us water. Don't give it to us. Take it to the ones that need it. We don't need it that bad. And sometimes we'll do that to ourselves. And I'll think, I don't need to go work out. Or I don't need to take care of myself. Or I don't need to take a vacation because the people I'm working with, they don't have the resources to do that. Or they don't have the resources to feel good about themselves. And one of the things that I've learned is that I model behavior in front of people. Whether I intend to or not, they watch us. They watch me, they see what we have on, they watch us, they see how they are very observant. I model behavior. And so I want to model positive behavior in front of the men and women that God has placed in front of me, for me to touch their lives. And guilt is not a behavior I want to model in front of them. And so I tell them all the time, look, I am the president and the CEO of the Sylvia Moseley fan club. I love me. I will take care of me. When I come in, you're going to see that I look like I like myself, that I feel good about me. I will take vacation. I will take a day off if I want to and just not come in. But when I come in the door, I work and I do the best that I can for you because I always want to give God my best. So I understand we have time for questions, and I'll stop talking long enough to allow us to have some questions. Did I put y'all to sleep? I can't hear you.
I think you gave us plenty to think about and process through, Chaplain Moseley. So as people kind of think about their questions, I also want them to think reflectively, right? Because that's part of doing that self-awareness work is through self-reflection. And, you know, of the 5 things that Chaplain Moseley identified of signs of vicarious trauma, that we are living through that, or that it is impacting us in ways that are not healthy for us. Feeling hopeless, helpless, hypervigilance, diminished creativity, minimizing common human experiences, and the inability to listen, or passive aggressive behavior. Think about part of our reflective work, part of our own self-care and self-healing, self-awareness is, which one of those right now is most prevalent for you as a frontline person? And you don't have to put it in the chat. Again, it's self-reflection. But I think that's, you know, something that we all need to keep mindful of. And I put in the chat that self-awareness and self-care are timely and timeless, right? So it could be 5 minutes from now, it could be another 20 minutes from now. But then also over time, we can get into these things. So for our group, let's see if there are any questions. How can we connect with you for the character development program? That this is from Dorella, that she has a program.
My phone number is 937-991-3430. I'll put it in the chat.
Great. And then she also wanted to know which prisons you serve in Dayton Correctional currently, but you've been at Allen Oakwood, Ohio Reformatory for Women, and there was one other, I can't
Lebanon
remember.
Correctional.
Lebanon Correctional, correct. Yep. Other questions?
Yeah, Reba.
Yes, Mike Davis.
For Dr. Moseley, and for anyone who's not yet read the book, it is a blessing. But could you maybe give us three things that we can leave here and work on to help us in our healing? I pass the ball to you, Doc.
Okay, what can we do? I think the first thing that we can do is we need to have a knowledge of ourselves. We need to spend time with ourselves. I think that's most important, is to have that time to just sit and be still. We are very busy people. We're always moving and going and doing and speaking, and we are looking on our phones and chatting, and we're on Facebook and we're on Snapchat and we're on all of those things, and we don't take time to sit and be still with ourselves. Just be still and sit and close our eyes and meditate and breathe and just feel our own bodies. I think that's the first thing that we can all do, is to spend time with ourselves. The second thing is to acknowledge and to agree that we are worth taking care of. That we are worth taking care of ourselves. And the more deeply we connect with ourselves, the more self-awareness we have. The more self-awareness we have, the more we can connect with our present, where we are right now. The more likely we are to have more joy in what we're doing, the more we connect with ourselves. So I think that as Reba put in the chat, that self-care, all of that is a part of just self-care. And then ask yourself if what you're doing is working for you in all levels of your life. Talk to yourself, question yourself. Is what you're doing edify you? Or are you using it to escape your own life? Does it bring you joy, or does it support your ego? Is it a place where you can do something about the pain in the world? Or is this distracting you from you? Talk to yourself and ask yourself some tough questions about you. I think that is most important. Why we do what we do, we have to have a real clear understanding Otherwise, I'll hurt myself and others if I don't have that level of self-awareness about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Why am I here? Centering, breathing, meditating, acknowledging that stresses in life, it comes with life. In this world, you will have trouble. So I have to find healthy ways to deal with stress, because stress is not about what's going on the outside. Stress is how I take what's on the outside and I internalize it on the inside, and then it becomes stress in my life and stress in my body, and it affects all of my organs, because we are a tripart, mind, body, and spirit. And so I think I said more than 3 things. Pursue meaningful tasks. Find something that you really enjoy that has nothing to do with work and do it. Challenge yourself to do something new. Learn a game, learn a board game, learn how to play chess. Go bicycle riding, take horseback riding lessons. Do something that's challenging that you've never done before. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the question, Mike. We are at time. We're a minute over. We could go on and on with this, but Chaplain Moseley, just out of the ballpark. So thank you.
Thank you
so much for, in many ways, for doing the work yourself so that you can do the work with us and help us do our own work. So we really do appreciate you and thank you. And on behalf of everybody, the clapping hands, and all kudos to you. And I put in the chat Chaplain Moseley's book, workbook, which from conversations with you previously, it was really designed for people like us, right, that are in this space. And so but I know you use it inside your work at Dayton Correctional Institution as well. So link on it, it's amazon.com or whatever, however, it's exclusively on Amazon, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes. All right. So so again, thank you all for participating. The next session starts in about 15 minutes. Again, you'll be let in about 5 minutes before that. And I am so glad that we recorded this session, and you'll get an email after the community experience telling you how to go back and watch and listen, probably multiple times as you need to, for not only encouragement, but just some wisdom that you have shared with us, Dr. Moseley. So thank you again. And the rest of you, enjoy the rest of the community experience.
Thank you all for having me. And again, I think the program Alternatives to Violence is a great program for the community and the prison. And any way you can get connected with it, they have a website, Alternatives to Violence USA.
All right. Thank you for that. All right. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.